Good evening. We are not expecting a fire drill this evening, so if the fire alarm goes off during the meeting, please leave immediately by the nearest emergency exit and gather outside Runnymede Hall. Thank you. Please stand for the entrance of the Mayor of Castle Point, Councillor Barry Campagna.
Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. Are there any apologies?
We have apologies from Councillors Brooke, Fuller, Harvey, Huntman, Larman, Thomas and Watson.
Thank you, Sonia. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any interest declared, members? Agenda item 3, minutes of the meeting held on the 8th of October 2025. Are the minutes of the 8th of October agreed, members? Okay. Agenda item 4, councillors' questions on notice. Member, there is one question on notice from Councillor Langley addressed to the Leader of the Council. Councillor Langley, can you please read out your question?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. All tonight's going to be good news, so I'm just going to say Merry Christmas now to everyone. But straight to business. So, in light of the local plan, which proposes over 6,000 new homes to our borough, some 3,300 allocated to Canvey Island alone, we are witnessing a surge in housing pressures that exacerbate existing issues like congestion and parking shortages. This will be compounded by the Council's adoption of the updated Essex parking standards, which introduce a zonal approach allowing reduced off-street parking requirements. This will cause further strain on Canvey's narrow, heavily populated streets, which are already amongst the worst in Essex for parking availability. This is creating nightmares for neighbours as families with multiple vehicles compete for limited parking. On top of this, the borough is seeing a rise in houses of multiple occupancy. The council has admitted in recent overview and scrutiny committee meetings that it lacks a full picture of the number of HMOs within the borough. Furthermore, officers have stated that conducting a comprehensive survey to obtain accurate numbers would be impossible with current resources, incredibly expensive, time-consuming and likely require outsourcing, leaving us unable to fully assess the scale of the problem or justify controls like additional licensing or Article 4 directions. Neighbouring council Basildon have approved borough-wide plans. Brighton and Hove, Bath and North East Somerset and Ipswich are some that have proactively implemented Article 4 directions to control HMO growth. Some justified by evidence of harms to amenities, parking and community cohesion. Yet Castle Point remains behind the curve, deferring action despite repeated scrutiny committee discussions. Residents on Canvey are concerned that unchecked development could lead to the reduction of living and parking standards, all whilst our government are desperately chasing HMOs for asylum seeker accommodation. We need to protect our island's eroded identity as a safe and friendly neighbourhood. When will the council stop making excuses, citing evidence and data gaps, prohibitive costs or resource limitations, and rather just take decisive steps to pursue an Article 4 direction and enhance licensing to protect our local people, preserve family housing and safeguard our community's future before it's too late. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Langley. Councillor Blackwell, can you please respond to the question?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and once again, thank you for allowing me to stay seated. I thank Councillor Langley for raising these important points on parking. HMOs and community impacts in the context of growth across the borough and in the particular Canvey Island. I appreciate the concerns residents have expressed. We'll address each issue directly. The Council has already adopted the 2024 Essex parking standards as agreed at Cabinet on the 16th of September. These standards include zonal approach that in specific circumstances such as where there's very high levels of connectivity on which there are no areas where there's no areas very high connectivity identified within Castle Point, planning decisions will continue to give close scrutiny to parking layout and provision, ensuring that new schemes meet the standards and do not worsen local congestion or parking stress. We recognise the concerns about the number of distributions of houses of multiple occupancy and the need for a robust borough-wide picture. No local authority has data on the exact number of HMOs. This is because the shape of housing market fluctuates all the time due to the market demands. HMOs are a particular housing type. They come and go. HMOs used quickly dependent on prevailing housing market. Castle Point Council has historically not had many because the market has not really been there. The other local authorities that you name have very different population types and very different types of housing supply and considerable higher numbers of HMOs. However, officers are actively working to identify potential small HMOs in addition to the known large HMOs on the public register, and build a fuller understanding of how many are operating, where they are located and the characteristics, and so that a comprehensive assessment can be undertaken. This includes drawing internal records, intelligence and strengthening across service working to ensure that we have an accurate, usable evidence base. This is to be due further consideration by the Overview and Scrutiny Committee early in the new year, with findings and recommendations due to be reported back to Cabinet for decisions. We fully acknowledge the pressure felt by residents on Canvey Island and the rest of Castle Point, particularly in relationship to congestion and parking, and the desire to protect the borough's identity and safe and friendly neighbourhood. Could I also just add, Mr Mayor, that when Councillor Langley said the fact that Basildon have approved the borough-wide plan, it's not quite factual. Basildon are going to approve just 2 wards to be licensed, subject to gathering of information, which all councils have to do legally, and then they're not going out borough-wide until next year, and they've got to do a 12-month consultation. We hope to go even quicker than that, and I'm sure once scrutiny is finished with it, we'll identify all HMOs and maybe implement Article 4 in Castle Point. Thank you very much.
Agenda item 5, Castle Point plan submission for examination in the Public Regulation 22. Ms Parrott, the Council Assistant Director, Climate and Growth, will introduce the report.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, members. The report you have before you this evening seeks your approval for the submission of the Castle Point plan for examination in public, and associated with that, delegations necessary to progress the Castle Point plan through the submission and examination processes. Back in November 2022, the Council approved a programme for the preparation of the Castle Point plan with the aim of engaging residents in the plan-making process for effective engagement and consultation. The aim of objectively assessing the need for housing at a local level, for making the best use of brownfield land and for protecting the green belt. Following 2 extensive periods of engagement in 2023 and 2024, a draft plan was presented to the Cabinet in July of this year that responded to the aims set out by the Council in November 2022, i.e. makes the best use of brownfield land and it protects the green belt, having regard to a local assessment of housing need. The plan makes provision for 6,196 homes, whilst protecting the current extent of the green belt by focusing on an urban regeneration approach to development. It provides strong protection to the natural environment and to heritage assets, and it seeks high levels of sustainability in new development by reducing the needs to travel for every journey and by reducing the cost of living for residents. It embodies principles around improving health and well-being, which link to the work that we're also undertaking with Sport England around improving health outcomes across the borough. It seeks to drive economic growth through town centre and employment area regeneration and through growing the tourism sector. Whilst the plan broadly aligns with the national planning policy when read as a whole and as set out in the National Planning Policy Framework, it does not make provision for the number of homes set out for Castle Point under the government's standard methodology. This would require the provision of around 700 homes per year, or just short of 12,000 homes over a 17-year period. The Castle Point plan makes provision for just over half of this requirement. There is evidence that growth at the level required by government would be harmful from a greenbelt perspective and would also give rise to harm to the natural environment and to heritage assets. It is further considered that it would not constitute sustainable development from a transport and accessibility perspective. Greenbelt release would also undermine the viability of urban regeneration sites. The Cabinet, back in July, approved the draft Castle Point plan for consultation, and the document known as the Regulation 19 draft Castle Point plan was published for consultation from the 1st of August to the 26th of September. Due to an error that occurred during that consultation, a further consultation on the same plan took place from the 24th of October to the 5th of December, with all previous respondents contacted appropriately. In total, 1,405 responses were received across both periods of consultation. The outcomes of these two consultations combined are set out in the Statement of Consultation, which is available to view on the Council's website. Whilst there remains strong public support for protecting the Greenbelt and focusing on urban regeneration, the urban-only approach has attracted some concerns about the impact of urban intensification, particularly from residents on Canvey Island. Furthermore, some consultees have indicated that the growth should be directed towards Greenbelt land at North West Fundersley. However, this land is in the Greenbelt and is not deliverable due to the impact this would have on the strategic road network. There are also consultees, predominantly in the house building sector, that have suggested that the level of growth in the plan is insufficient and does not align with the government's standard methodology for calculating local housing requirements. Overall, most of the issues raised through the consultation on the draft Castle Point plan can be addressed through modifications to address technical issues, or else they can be effectively rebutted through the evidence that we have. However, it is likely that a consideration of the approach to development and the decisions taken to set a housing target lower than the government's standard methodology and to omit Greenbelt sites in favour of urban regeneration will be a significant consideration in the examination of the plan as it moves forward. The examination of the Castle Point plan is the next stage in the plan making process, whereby an independent planning inspector appointed by the Secretary of State examines the Castle Point plan to ensure that it is legally compliant and sound. It is therefore important that you, as the Council, are satisfied that the Castle Point plan is ready to be submitted for examination. The report before you sets out how the legal requirements for preparing a plan have been met and also details how soundness requirements have also been addressed. In terms of the legal requirements, the Council has a legal obligation to prepare a development plan for its area. It is intended that the Castle Point plan will meet this requirement, replacing the 1998 adopted local plan which is very out of date. In preparing the Castle Point Plan, regard has been had to the requirements of the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act 2004 and the Town and Country Planning, Local Planning England Regulations 2012. It's also been necessary to take into account the Strategic Environmental Assessment Regulations, the Habitat Regulations and the Equality Act. The report before you details how each of these requirements have been met. However, to ensure compliance with the legal requirements, the Council is recommended this evening to agree an update to the Local Development Scheme, which sets out the programme for preparing the Castle Point Plan. This will ensure it's completely up to date at the point of submission. In terms of soundness, the inspectors appointed to examine the plan will consider whether the plan is positively prepared, justified, effective and consistent with national policy. As detailed in the report, it is considered that these tests are met, although it is the case that the Castle Point Plan falls short in terms of meeting housing requirements as determined by national policy. This does present a risk that the plan may be found unsound at examination. Whilst it is considered that the position that the Council has taken is supported by evidence and national policy when read as a whole, housing growth is a key government priority and will be influential in the examination process. Whilst officers will make every effort to ensure that the Council's evidence is highlighted through the examination and a successful outcome is achieved, we will come under intense scrutiny. The Castle Point Plan being found unsound therefore represents the key risk in relation to a decision to submit the plan at this time. If it is found unsound, then there is a risk that the Secretary of State may intervene in plan making in Castle Point under the powers of Section 21 of the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act, which can be used if a plan is unsatisfactory. However, due to the age of the adopted local plan, which is from 1998, the Council is also in a position where if it were to choose not to proceed with a plan, it would risk intervention by the Secretary of State anyhow under Section 27 of the same Act for omitting to do anything necessary to progress a plan. This would more likely be a more immediate intervention and would not necessarily provide the Council with the platform to explain local circumstances and the decisions it has taken in respect of protection of the Greenbelt. In terms of financial considerations, the preparation of the Castle Point Plan was allocated a budget of 1.7 million from reserves in November 2022, of which around 600,000 remains for the examination process. It's considered that that is sufficient for the examination. However, in progressing to examination, the risk of abortive costs do increase if the plan is found unsound. If intervention were to occur, any costs incurred by the Secretary of State are rechargeable to the authority and may exceed the allocated budget. The report before you this evening has been referred to you as Council by Cabinet and recommends that you progress the Castle Point Plan to examination, taking all of those matters referred to into account. To do so with assurance of the legal compliance, you are recommended to approve the updated local development scheme that's provided as Appendix A to your report this evening. You are then invited to specifically approve the Castle Point Plan for submission. This is provided at Appendix B. This is the same plan that was approved for Regulation 19 consultation in July 2025. If you agree to proceed to examination with the Castle Point Plan, you are then invited to approve a series of matters which will allow the smooth progress of the Castle Point Plan to submission, through examination and back to this Council for consideration for adoption. Thank you, members, for bearing with me as I've summarised this rather extensive report this evening. I will hand back to the Mayor and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Ms Barrett. Members, there are 6 recommendations set out in paragraph 3.1, the report, that I will move from the chair. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Blackwell? Councillor Copsey, as a cabinet member for strategic planning, I invite you to speak on this motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to say a few words on this historic moment for our borough. The Castle Point Plan is a result of years of careful, detailed hard work. The plan had a very clear direction from the outset to be a sound, legally compliant plan that was focused on the needs of Castle Point and its residents. The plan has had some very challenging issues to deal with to reach this point, including major changes in government planning laws and the housing target formula. However, despite all this, the plan has been completed. The plan is a large document with a vast amount of supporting evidence. It covers the years 2026 to 2043. The range of issues the plan deals with are wide and far-reaching. Some key aspects are allocating housing, protecting green belts, and stipulating the infrastructure needed to support our community. Infrastructure that includes community facilities, education, health and well-being, green and open space, sports and leisure, digital communications, flood and climate resilience, utilities, and of course transport. No local plan ever pleases everybody, as that would be an impossible task, but the Castle Point Plan is community focused based on much of the feedback received. I'd like to say some thank yous. I'd like to thank all those officers that have worked on the plan. I'd like to thank all the legal and planning experts that have given crucial advice for the plan. I'd like to thank Councillor Warren Gibson for his tenacious work in chairing the Castle Point Plan Board. I'd like to thank all the councillor members of the board for their commitment and determination. I'd like to thank all the councillors for their support in this great endeavour. I'd like to say a special thank you to the residents of this borough, as without them we would not have reached where we are today. Residents who campaigned against the withdrawn local plan of destruction that the Castle Point Conservatives put forward in 2019. Residents who signed petitions to save our greenbelt and to stop the ruination of our borough. Residents who believed that our community deserved better and used their vote in local elections to usher in a new era for Castle Point. Residents who cared enough about our borough to participate in all the consultations relating to the plan. Finally, I wish to state my full support and backing for the Castle Point Plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Copsey. Members, does anybody else want to speak on the motion? Councillor Knott?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It goes without saying tonight, doesn't it, that anybody that votes for this to progress forwards needs to be satisfied with the opinion it's sound and legally compliant. But for me, there's another issue. It's one of honesty. Is it an honest plan? Have we as councillors been honest with our community? In 2023, 2024, like many of us here, I stood on doorsteps promising people that we would do all we could to defend and protect the green belt and that we'd prioritise building on brownfield. And this plan does exactly what we promised to do. Absolutely no green belt, and that includes, of course, the Salvation Army farmland that some falsely claimed we had secret plans to build on. And regarding the Salvation Army farmland, it's worth noting that if the government inspector approves this plan once it progresses forwards, that farmland and other greenbelt sites will have protection from development. It's odd that there are some that seek to prevent building on the Salvation Army farmland, but have encouraged people to object to this plan. the very plan that saves that green belt in Hadley. And I just want to compare the honesty of this plan and of this administration to what came before us. After nearly 20 years of delay and dithering, the Conservatives produced a plan that intended to build on Greenbelt. Greenbelt site after Greenbelt site after Greenbelt site, swathes of it. That's what they planned to do. Thank goodness we withdrew that plan, and I wonder, after 2024, there's not a single Conservative councillor in this chamber. But yet still today, the Conservatives and their activists proclaim in one breath their love of the green belts, and in the very next argue that we should have a plan that builds on Greenbelt. So, Mr. Mayor, I will be voting for this plan tonight to progress. In my opinion, it's honest, it's sound, and it's legally compliant. And yes, there will be challenges. Nobody's saying it's easy. But I think a lot of work has been done. There's evidence to support the lower numbers. And I thank those on the local plan board, including the officers, as Councillor Copsey has said. I thank Councillor Warren Gibson for chairing the local plan board and for all the members' hard work, their relentless and incredible work they did on this plan. Their efforts really cannot be understated. But Mr. Mayor, just finally, if I may, I would like to pay tribute to my fellow ward councillor, Councillor Tim Copsey. His knowledge and experience, built up probably by decades of campaigning around Greenbelt, he is an authentic, genuine campaigner for Greenbelt. That knowledge has been invaluable to his colleagues on the local plan board, and despite, unfortunately, it's a sign of times, but despite enduring offensive, sarcastic and toxic personal attacks on social media by particular individuals, he has never stooped to those levels, but risen above those attacks, leaving the toxic behaviour in the gutter where it belongs. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will be proud to support this plan tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Knott. Is there anybody else? Councillor McCarthy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members, tonight's decision is a significant moment for Castle Point. The local plan before us is the product of 3 years of sustained work, detailed technical evidence, and difficult but responsible choices. It reflects an urban-first approach that has not been taken lightly, but has been tested rigorously against the realities of our borough. Castle Point faces unique and severe constraints. We are bounded by Greenbelt, coast, flood risk, major infrastructure and limited transport capacity. These are not abstract planning considerations. They shape where development is genuinely deliverable and where it is simply not. This plan confronts those realities honestly. What sets this plan apart is the depth of evidence. The depth of evidence underpinning it, capacity studies, infrastructure assessments, sustainability appraisals and viability testing. Every major site allocation has been scrutinised. The urban-first approach is not ideological, it is evidence-led and proportionate to the borough we actually govern. It is also worth remembering where we have come from. Previous administrations, now no longer in office, failed this borough by advancing a plan that would have sacrificed large areas of our Greenbelt without sufficient justification or deliverability. That plan rightly did not proceed. In contrast, the plan we are submitting tonight protects every acre of our Greenbelt. It demonstrates that housing need can be addressed without destroying the very character and environmental assets that define Castle Point. Submission to the inspector is not the end of the process, but is a necessary and responsible step. It shows that we are prepared to stand behind the work we have done, the evidence we have assembled, and the balanced approach we have taken on behalf of our residents. And for those reasons, I support submitting the Castle Point local plan for inspection. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Calvert. Is there anyone else? Tom? Sorry? Councillor Langley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, this plan has massive impacts for every member of our borough. So it's important I looked at this objectively. Our government want 14,000 homes for our borough. We propose 6,196. Government want to destroy our green belt. We aim to protect the green belt. That is what the people asked for. However, if they knew it would bring Canvey to a grinding halt, I would wonder if they would still agree. The plan is great for Dawes Heath, Hadley, Fundersley and Benfleet, but I don't think it's equal to our workhorse of the borough, Canvey. It seeks to bring 3,300 homes with no guarantee of additional infrastructure. We have agreements of what we cannot achieve, but not what we can. Other recent local plans have funded infrastructure within the proposal. On this occasion, we do not. For a project like the Third Road, from consultation to delivery would take 17 years. The life of our plan is 17 years, so it would be impossible to get infrastructure before homes. I would urge to seek immediate short-term improvements to traffic flow on and off the island. Indent bus stops, widen some of the roundabouts so 2 cars can actually get round at once, modify traffic light and pedestrian crossing sequences, and make getting from the castle to the point more efficient. I propose we make modifications to seek securities and guarantees that the infrastructure can support our economy, our health services can support our growth, and our drainage can support our waste. I would like to see statements of common ground on what we can achieve. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Langley. Councillor Tom Gibson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I didn't actually come here with the intention to say much this evening, but I just thought I would offer a semi-unique perspective that I've got of being the only member of Cabinet not to sit on the plan board. So I've seen firsthand the work that these guys have put into it. And I don't think a lot of people grasp the gravity of what they've been asked to do. I mean, just from what I've observed alone, there's been seemingly endless board meetings, constant scrutiny of sometimes several hundred-page documents in their own time, attending numerous incredibly complex legal briefings, frequent travel as well, whether it be to challenge members of the government over their planning reforms in Westminster, or to take the fight to save every possible blade of greenbelt grass to the highest judicial level. And they've done this every step of the way. All of this as well in the case of several members on top of working full-time jobs. Anyone is, of course, welcome to scrutinise this plan, to argue its contents, to hold us as councillors to account for the decisions we make, and we'd encourage them, of course, to do so. But what's beyond question, in this case, is the dedication, the graft, and the enduring commitment of all the members of the Castle Point Plan Board to uphold the values upon which they stood when first elected to office, something that Councillor Knott quite eloquently pointed out earlier has not always been the case. For that alone, I would like to place on record thanks to the Castle Point Plan Board for their tireless efforts over the last few years, and in particular, Councillor Warren Gibson for his steadfast leadership as chair, and Councillor Dave Blackwell for backing the board as leader. I cannot think of a group of people I would trust more to set out a vision for the future of our borough. If members share my view that this board have put this plan together with undoubtable integrity, diligence and commitment to all of our shared values, I will strongly encourage them to support this next step and back the plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Watson.
Gibson.
Gibson, sorry. Dave?
Anyone else wants to speak?
Anybody else want to speak? Yeah, I've got you, Dave. Anybody else? No. Councillor Blackwell, would you like to speak on this motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I thank you. And I've listened to all the comments what have been put forward tonight. And Mr. Mayor, I've noticed that all the campaigns to say the Green Belt in the local press and on Facebook, and I've got to say, over all the years I've been on this council, I've been a part of many Save the Green Belt campaigns. And, you know, the one thing I will say about this plan is the fact that we have listened to what the residents want. They want us to save their green fields so that future generations can look out and play on green grass. If the government had its way, there would be no green belt. If the previous administration had its way, there would be no green belt. And so, you know, I got great privilege to stand in with these people to protect. I've done it all my political life to save the green belt. And we're here today to approve a plan which has no green belt in it whatsoever. And that's got to be a feat we've got to be proud of. I'll go on to Canvey. Now, Canvey Island, I've lived there all my life. And that's a long, long, long time. And people on Canvey I talk to, yes, we are worried. We're worried about the congestion we sit in every day. We're worried because of that 12,000 of our residents commute off the island every day. We sit in traffic jams every day. And the one thing I will say about this plan, the plan identifies Canvey Island's congestion and the areas which are congested. And I'll say this to Canvey people, I don't expect any large developments to go ahead on Canvey Island until we sort out our infrastructure, until Canvey gets its third road it desperately needed. And I think we are close, because I still honestly believe with the new Freeport coming on, there's an opportunity for Canvey actually to get the desperate link it's always wanted. And members, we are writing to the Right Honourable Heidi Alexandra MP, the Secretary of State of Transport, laying out this council's plan for a third road and why we need a third road on Canvey. And it's quite a good document to the Minister, and we're hoping he'll look at that and take umbrage of what we're trying to say. And members, also one thing to remember, if this local plan is approved, then every single development still has to go through the planning committee for scrutiny, and it still has to be approved if it fits all our criteria. So it's not just a cut deal. It's not just going to suddenly get thousands of houses built. It'll be years before you see anything going forward, I'm sure of it. So members, please do the right thing and let's push this plan forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Blackwell. Councillor Warren Gibson, before we move to the vote, would you like to speak on this motion?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll keep it short because I think most of my colleagues have pretty much summed up what we're all thinking. I think there's a couple of points we need to remember. Last time any member voted in this chamber to submit a local plan for inspection, it included 15 Greenbelt sites with over 5,000 homes. This was voted for and it was carried, despite the best efforts of the Canvey Island independents. This was back when there were 24 Conservative councillors representing the mainland. Not long before that meeting, we had Conservative councillors posing for pictures on a tank down by Jotman's. I can only presume this publicity stunt was to show residents they were ready to fight for our Greenbelt. If this was the case, I wouldn't want them backing me up in any fight. As shortly after, they rolled over and they voted to destroy our Greenbelt. One thing this administration has been is clear from the start. We are here with a mandate from the residents of this borough to try to protect the Greenbelt. We haven't deviated from this, and for the best part of 3 years, myself and the Plan Board have been working towards a plan with no Greenbelt included. This plan, upon adoption, will achieve that. I know it's been said by Councillor Copsey, Councillor Knott and the others, but I really want to express my thanks to Amanda Parrott, who over the last 3 years, along with the rest of the board, I think we can all agree it's not all been roses. There's been some moments, but we've got through it. We've got through it, and we're on there putting forward a plan that we said to our residents that we would put forward. And for that, I'll make no apologies. It's also important to remember that this plan is for 6,196 houses against the government target of 11,900. Members, one last thing for me. I ask you all to support this plan. I ask you to support our leader, and I ask you to support the Plan Board. Thank you very much. Oh,
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Members, we will vote on recommendation 1. May I have a show of hands for those in favour of the motion? There's only one against. It's agreed.
Yeah.
Well, that's agreed. Okay. You've got you get the opportunity to vote against.
Yeah, ask him if he wants to vote.
Those against? Councillor Langley.
Yeah.
Thank you. Councillors, that's agreed. This one? Members, we will now vote on recommendation 2. May I have a show of hands for those in favour of the motion? Okay. Those against? That's it. There's no. That's agreed. Okay. Thank you for that. It's agreed. Councillors, are you happy to vote on recommendations 3 to 6 all together? Yeah. May I have a show of hands for those in favour of the motion? Those against? Okay. That's agreed, councillors. Right. Item 6, the local government reorganisation and devolution update. Miss Hutchins, the council's chief executive, will introduce the report.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you, members. Members, this report is an update on the latest position regarding devolution and local government reorganisation, which is a fast-paced and constantly evolving set of circumstances. Members will be aware that the Minister has indicated that she is minded to postpone the inaugural mayoral elections from 2026 to 2028, and that has now been confirmed in writing and will be brought before Parliament in due course. We expect devolution to progress ahead in any event, and a new structural changes order for the Greater Essex Combined County Authority will be drafted. We'll need to go through the corporate governance of the 3 upper tier authorities before being laid before Parliament. In the meantime, local government reorganisation continues, and all 4 proposals for reorganisation in Essex are currently out to public consultation. That consultation runs until midnight on Sunday the 11th of January, and I would encourage all members to respond to it and to spread the word to friends and family to do the same. The Council itself is a statutory consultee and will be putting in its own response, which will mirror the decision which this Council took in September. The recommendation is to allow the administrative process for doing this. Members will be aware that the Minister has written to all leaders of councils who are due to have scheduled elections in 2026 to offer them the opportunity to make representations to postpone those elections if the councils do not have capacity to run them due to preparations for local government reorganisation. This council does not have scheduled elections, but of course we administer the county council elections for this borough, and I can confirm that we have capacity to do that if those elections go ahead. The decision as to whether elections do go ahead is ultimately for the Secretary of State, who has asked for representations before Thursday, the 15th of January. Thank you, Mr Mayor. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
This bit here. I will move the recommendation 2 set out in paragraph 3.1 of the report. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Blackwell, thank you. Would anyone else like to speak on the motion? Councillor, is the report noted? Members, we will now vote on the recommendation 2. May I have a show of hands for those in favour of the motion? Unanimous, yeah. That's unanimous. Thank you, Council. That is agreed. Agenda item 7, Update to the Constitution. Miss Hutchins, the Council's Chief Executive, will introduce the report.
Thank you again, Mr Mayor. Members, this report is a necessary update to the Constitution to enable identified improvements that need to be made to the provisions relating to officer employment and the role of the Staff Appointments and Review Panel. This report addresses those improvements and suggests new drafting to replace provisions in the Constitution currently. Those amendments are set out in Appendix 1 to the report, and they will replace the current drafting. The amendments clarify the intended role of the Staff Appointments and Review Panel and reflect both best practice and the applicable legislative framework. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
I will move the recommendations set out in paragraph 3.1 of the report. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Backwell. Would anyone else like to speak on this? Councillor Langley. Councillor Langley.
Thank you. So I'll get straight to business on this one. Chapter 1, Section 8.4. This is the composition of the Staff and Review Appointment Panel. This is to decide the fate of our directors, chief exec, and anyone earning over 100,000 within the council. So you could say some very influential positions. Currently, it's made up of 7 members with automatic entitlement for the leader of the opposition and all parties represented equally. The amendment removes that. Conveniently, just after getting opposition in the House. You'd think this reflects recent changes and is an awkwardly timed coincidence. Well, Local Authority Standard Orders Regulation Schedule 1 Part 1 was last updated in 2015. Section 4.2 has never been updated since its publication in 2001. There's no provision in legislation that stops equal representation. So now, why now? Changing constitution to suit is no different to cancelling elections. In my opinion, anyone who supports this is no different to the squatters in Essex County Council. I've supported this council and administration when I believe it is done right, and this feels like a stab in the back. I asked to prove to the people sat behind me that this isn't a direct, unprovoked attack on democracy, snuck in under this distraction of the local plan. I have 4 questions. When was this last change in our constitution? What were those changes? Who initiated this change? And why now? Thank you.
Could I ask Ms Assington to respond to these questions?
Thank you, Councillor Langley. In relation to the update of the Constitution, that was done in January of 2024, I believe. The issue in relation to proportionality is the use of the word equality. So all committees are assigned in relation to statutory provisions which require proportionate representation of members proportionate to their electoral representation across the council. That is not the same as equality, and therefore the provisions are at odds with the requirement for proportionality, and that's the reason for them being amended.
Councillor Lang.
I'm glad you raised that point, actually, because Local Government and Housing Act 1989, Section 17, states that we can depart from Section 15 and 16 proportionality, as we currently do. This would have required a unanimous vote. You are seeking to wind back the freedoms of the opposition. Why are we departing from unanimous vote, a previous unanimous vote?
Councillor Hutchins.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I believe I've already answered the question.
Anybody else want to say anything? No, all right. Members, we will now vote on the recommendations. May I have a show of hands for those in favour of the motion? All by one. Those against? Right, that's unanimous.
It's not unanimous. It's not unanimous. But
No.
that's agreed.
That's agreed, sorry. Thank you to the council for agreeing that. Is that it then, members? Yeah. Members, that concludes the business for this evening. Special council meeting. Thank you for all attending. Meeting closes at
7:50. 10 to 8.
10 to 8. Right. Thank you.
Please stand while the Mayor of Castle Point, Councillor Barry Campagna, leaves the chamber.